Welcome to the first video of the channel System Reset, dubbed The Pilot. The vision for this video, and by extension this channel, is ambitious and long overdue. This is a space for dissecting economic ideas, questioning long-standing systems, and exploring alternatives that prioritize human well-being over the profit-driven motives of today. On that note, I am only one person with one perspective. I understand that I cannot do this alone, and so I am directly inviting anyone and everyone to not just criticize my arguments, but to make them your own. I know that in general, a resource and gift economy can easily outproduce our current economy, but that isn't necessarily true in every case. Open discussion and diverse perspectives are essential in refining these ideas and ensuring they're both practical and effective. Without further ado, let's dive in. After much consideration, trial, and error, I have refined the purpose of this channel to introduce and critically examine economic models, both existing and emerging, while breaking down the myths, propaganda, and dogma that keep us locked into this outdated way of thinking. This isn't simply about being anti-capitalist or anti-consumerism. Those discussions already exist, and while critiques are important, I want to go beyond that. I want to explore practical solutions, new ways of structuring our economy to better serve people, not just the corporations and businesses. Our current economic system, for all its flaws, has allowed us to reach incredible technological and societal advancements. If it were a complete failure, we wouldn't be here today discussing alternatives in the first place. So I acknowledge that there are aspects of it that do work. But just because something functions doesn't mean it can't be improved, and I believe we can do much better. Instead of patching up a broken system with half measures, why not reimagine and rebuild it from the ground up, utilizing our current economy? A new, more resilient, equitable, and human-centered economy isn't just possible, it's necessary. The goal isn't to erase all aspects of the current system, but to transition towards something more sustainable, just, and capable of providing for human needs without the constant threat of financial ruin. Introducing the resource-based and gift economy. This brings us to today's main topic. A resource-based economy measures wealth based on available resources rather than arbitrary fiscal potential. In this model, economic decisions are made based on what is physically and technologically possible rather than what's profitable for a select few. A gift economy operates on the principle that access to goods and services does not require an exchange. Instead, resources are given without the explicit agreement for an immediate or future reward, removing financial barriers that often prevent people from accessing basic needs. So what happens when we combine these two models? You get a resource and gift economy. It's a system that facilitates the distribution of available resources without artificial barriers like money, debt, or forced labor. It shifts the focus from accumulation and competition to sustainability and accessibility. The beauty of this system is that it turns what is traditionally an economic issue into a logistics problem. Instead of asking, how do we afford to provide for everyone, we ask, how do we efficiently distribute what we already have? This fundamental shift changes everything. And whenever I introduce this concept, I usually hear the same questions. Who decides who gets what? Why would anybody work if everything is free? And who's going to do the hard work? So let's just tackle these one by one. Who decides who gets what? The simple answer is you do. In this system, if you need something, you ask for it. If it's available, you receive it. The idea that we need centralized authorities or corporations to allocate resources is a myth. Open source models, cooperative distribution, and decentralized supply chains already prove that resource allocation can work without rigid hierarchies. Of course, there needs to be logistics in place to ensure fair distribution. But these challenges are logistical, not economic. We already have the technology to track supply, predict demand, and ensure efficiency. We just don't use it to its full potential because doing so doesn't serve the profit motives. Why would anybody work? This question assumes that the only reason people work is to avoid starvation or homelessness. If that were true, then every person who has their basic needs met would simply stop contributing to society. But we know that's not the case. People create, innovate, and solve problems because they're passionate, curious, and driven by purpose, not necessarily because they fear economic ruin. Also, let's just acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. If the only reason people work today is to avoid starvation, then our current system is built on coercion rather than genuine productivity. In a resource and gift economy, people would not work out of fear, but a collective understanding that maintaining the infrastructure, research, and innovation benefits everybody. Who's going to do the hard work? The answer is we are. People who can, people who want to. In this system, we're not just telling people that their efforts matter, we mean it. You're not just working for a wage, you're working for a future. As an able-bodied person for now, I would absolutely volunteer for undesirable work under this system, especially if it needed to be done. That said, a lot of the hard work we currently do is unjustifiable. If there's work that nobody wants to do without coercion of the system and it's not related to air, water, food, or shelter or health care, then we should be scrutinizing that industry heavily. Additionally, we should harness automation and technology to minimize truly undesirable labor. Rather than forcing people into grueling jobs for survival, we should collectively ask, how can we use our advancements to eliminate unnecessary hardship and ensure that essential work is shared more fairly? Which leads me to my next point. Guilds. Guilds would be local organizations that convert resources for the benefit of the local community while allowing excess to go to surrounding communities. Ideally, they would be democratically operated, oriented towards providing quality products and services. They'd have a democratic hierarchy where positions are based on skill and knowledge. They'd allow for the free transfer of knowledge between guilds, since without the threat of competition, the motivation for withholding information is minimized. They'd reduce much of the desire for power and control as motivation shifts from personal gain to collective well-being. Practically, guilds would function as the backbone of local economies. They would produce essential goods, provide necessary services, and ensure resource distribution remains efficient. By coordinating efforts across different communities, guilds could prevent shortages, reduce waste, and promote sustainable production practices. They would also serve as centers for education and skill sharing, ensuring knowledge and expertise remains accessible to all. Overcoming psychological and cultural barriers. Transitioning to a resource and gift economy presents not only logistical challenges, but also deeply ingrained psychological and cultural obstacles. Our current economic system has conditioned us to associate labor with survival, wealth with personal worth, and competition with progress. These beliefs, however, are not intrinsic to human nature. They are learned behaviors reinforced by systemic structures that prioritize profit over well-being. One particularly pervasive psychological barrier is the notion that individuals must earn or deserve access to basic necessities. This belief is not only ethically questionable, but it's also counterproductive. When people are denied essential resources such as food, shelter, or healthcare, they're forced to circumvent the system to meet their needs. For instance, shoplifting food should not be criminalized, as it often stems from a systemic deprivation rather than a moral failing. In a society where necessities are freely accessible, the incentive to engage in such acts diminishes significantly. Moreover, the very idea of stealing from corporate entities that cannot consume or experience deprivation reveals the absurdity of prioritizing artificial property rights over human survival. By dismantling these arbitrary barriers, we can create a system where access to resources is based on need rather than financial capability, fostering cooperation over coercion. My next point is private versus personal property. A common misconception about alternative economic models is the fear that communal systems would permit the unchecked seizure of an individual's belongings. This concern stems from a conflation of private property, capital assets used for profit and exploitation, with personal property, items used for individual well-being and autonomy. Anarchist philosopher Nicholas Walters succinctly articulated this distinction. As a rule of thumb, anarchists oppose those forms of property which are owned by a few people but which are used by others. This leads to the former controlling the latter and using them to produce a surplus for them, either directly, as in the case of an employee, or indirectly in the case of a tenant. Private property refers to capital, factories, rental housing, and other assets that generate profit through the labor of others. In contrast, personal property encompasses items like homes, vehicles, and personal tools, which are not leveraged for exploitation. Immanuel Kant argued that respect for personal property is the foundation to a free and just society. A resource and gift economy does not advocate for the abolition of personal possessions. Rather, it challenges the concentration of productive assets in the hands of the privileged few by democratizing access to resources while safeguarding personal autonomy. We can create a system that balances collective well-being with individual dignity. In conclusion, if you want people to be productive, you have to provide them with the resources they need to succeed. This is true in any economic system. A resource and gift economy challenges us to rethink how we allocate wealth, distribute resources, and define value. It isn't about eliminating hard work or contribution. It's about ensuring that hard work leads to real, tangible benefits for everyone, rather than just a privileged few. This is just the beginning of the conversation. In future videos, we're going to break down specific aspects of the system, address concerns, and explore realistic steps towards implementation. If this resonates with you, stick around, share your thoughts, let's build something better together. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me as I'm trying to get this channel and these ideas off the ground and into people's heads. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.